Welcome
Recording.
back. Yes, we're recording. We're going to have a casual chat. It might get serious, but I'm just curious about my friends. And I wanted to talk to my friends and share a bit of their world with the rest of the world. And so I have my friend Hope here, um, my lovely friend who's been supportive and so wonderful and awesome and insightful. And she's a podcast and does amazing work for many, many things, like a jack of all trades. And so I'm guessing some of your stuff might get weaved in, but we're primarily going to talk about cinema therapy because I have no idea what that means. I have a feeling, but I'm not sure. So I'd love to learn more about you, your work, and your perspective on how um, you see the world using cinema therapy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, my love. I 1,000% adore you. You know this. I think you're amazing. So anytime I can spend with you, even virtually.
Yeah. So the term itself, could you give us a really quick breakdown of what it even means? What is cinema therapy?
So cinema therapy is the process of it's more so a tool in regular therapy for a lot of people because I know everyone who starts therapy, they're not just going to sit down and like divulge their whole life. Like a lot of people, even myself, when I first started my own therapy, I was that person who sat in the corner and was like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I know I'm supposed to talk, but I don't want to talk, like so cinema therapy is a basic tool in order to help draw people out and get to know, and it helps the therapist get to know their problems and their perspectives. A lot of the times, obviously, when you have your first initial appointment, you get like a baseline, like, oh, well, why are you here? Is it because you are going through a divorce? Is it because you have, neurological whatever? Is it X, Y, and Z? So they can take that and get a baseline of what's going on.
Mhm.
And then they can say, you know what? Because a lot of times also therapists give homework. They should give homework. So their first homework will be, you know what? Go home, watch this movie,
Uh,
jot down what you think, what characters do you,
mm,
you know, coincide with, what, all these little things. And then you can use that tool to help them draw out what they feel and what they want. Um, I know there's a plethora of movies out there that tackle different issues and ideas and everything. So it's a vast majority of what you can use it for. I thought it was just such a cool tool because I've always been a freak about films and TV. Like that's always been my passion. And then, once I got older, I was like, oh, I like the human brain. And then in high school, actually, I was in like AP Psych or something. And my teacher was like, so I'm going to take this week to talk about this because I think it's really cool. It's not in the curriculum or anything. And I looked at her, I was like, you are a godsend. Yes, this is my life. This is my passion. So, yeah. And ever since I've been like obsessed with the ideas of the framework and everything.
mm. It actually made me think of a couple things too. It made me think of like this is bibliotherapy books, right? But in the form of cinema, film. And it's so much about like and someone's narrative and story. And so like it's interesting to me because I'm very nosy in therapist groups. I'm always lurking and reading what they're writing. And there's a lot of them. So here's my question to you sometimes too, like, or observation. Some therapists or some people don't understand that there's a connection between the things that we consume and watch or enjoy and who we are as a person. They think it's separate. So, like, how do you explain or describe to make it more relatable, to make it more appealing, like, or believable that, look, this stuff is part of you too?
My favorite thing would be, all right, what are your hobbies? Everyone has a hobby. They have at least one hobby. And I'm like, okay, well, you love that. That's a part of you. That's what you do. You wouldn't be you without it. It's the same thing. There's just the fact that media has so much more routes and everything, and it's more creative. I mean, the best thing, a great example is Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
It started out as like a low budget, rinky dink film that no one thought would be good. And now it's a pop culture icon. It's a literal religion,
Hmm.
like all this stuff. It's like that came from a media, that came from a movie, and so obviously, yes, it's going to shape the lives of people just from that following. You could do it with any following, like Star Wars, Star Trek people, like gamers, like all that. It's all consuming because it's also an escapism tool as well. So
Mm-hmm. I think that's actually a good path to go because I think people sometimes don't want to associate with what you would call an escape, right? So like there might be some defensiveness that comes out and they're like, no, it's just I'm just bored or I need to relax, so I'm gonna watch it or read this thing, right? And so like um it comes down to like, I guess for me, acceptance of, well, this could be a part of you, like the words you said, a part. We're not saying this is entirely you. It's not a stigma to be more whole, but you have some feelings about this part of you, right? So that's interesting too.
anything that evokes an emotion is going to be a part of you. I mean, uh, I know like my go-to is whenever I need a good cry, I turn on Avatar: The Last Airbender and I watch
Mhm.
Uncle Iroh singing Leaves on the Vine,
Wow.
and
Wow.
that's part of me. That's the sad part
Hmm.
of me.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I get that. Yes. Hmm. I have some cringy animes that I used to watch too. Like I used to be so like edgy and like dark and emo, and like a part of me was to always have a sad identity, right? And so I'd always lean into like
what
Lane.
anime?
Um, so
Oh,
gosh,
Serial Experiments Lane,
perfect,
obviously.
perfect blue, like uh yeah, like very dark and just like self-sabotaging and just like victimizing and just like surreal types of things. um that was my world for a long time, so like it is a reflection of me, but it's not all of me. I think that sometimes we feel angry, like how dare you tell me who I am. It's like just because I like this,
Mm,
right? But like that's not what we're trying to say. That's not what the message is ever. But it's so black and white sometimes. When people hear us, they don't hear everything what we're trying to say, so it is hard.
right.
Yeah. Mm. I like how you lit up when we talked about Perfect Blue, because I do love Perfect Blue. But I like Black Swan too. I like the Joker.
The thing is, Satoshi Kon is like one of my RIP Satoshi Kon. He is one of my greatest director loves ever. Like all of his work he's done, I'm just like, ah. I've actually, speaking of cinema therapy, with my podcast, that was the very first episode I had Elizabeth come on. Actually, I think
I think I
was
remember that. I would comment on it. I was commenting. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
it was with Perfect Blue, and I just remember her messaging me, and she's like, "What the heck did you just have me watch?"
You're
She
welcome.
was she well, like she's such like the total opposite of us in that perspective because she is just so bubbly and like happy go
Yeah.
lucky all the time. So when I showed her that like intensity, she's like, I don't think my brain can handle this.
It's like you get to share a part of your psyche with her, and she's like, where are the hearts and rainbows?
Like, she's like, I like the beginning part where they were singing.
Of course you do. You I love that. And that's like, instead of us directly sharing, like my psyche is like a little bit more wear and tear with about the darkness of society and life. Let me share this
Oh,
film with
yes.
you. Just one step removed, right? So like, what do you think about it? What do you think about my psyche? What do you think about how I interpret the world? It's so interesting. Yeah. It's a love language. It really is.
Yeah, no, it's just like how you said, like with
Hmm.
bibliophiles and all that. It's the same thing, just a
Yeah.
different media.
But the funny thing is, like, we should, I don't want to poke her, but I think we should find more things for her to watch. Just saying.
Oh, every time I give her something to watch, I get like a a fucking 3-page thing of like, what did you do to me? How dare you do this to me? I'm so depressed now. Why am I depressed?
Oh, I love that. And her relationship with you is so strong that she's willing to go there, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I try and talk with her almost every day, even
Hmm.
if it's just like very minute stupid things or sharing
Yeah.
a video or something. So,
Hmm. I do find that's
and
like quality time is important.
mhm.
Yeah.
And it's so funny too because both you and her, you are on the literal opposite side of the country as me, and I just it's so funny how I randomly found her and then randomly found you. And I know with my personality, I was just like, nope, you're mine now.
I
Can't go stand
appreciate it.
this.
No, I like that. I appreciate it. We all need someone like that. So you are mine. You caught me. Thank you. Um, Forever in your pocket. So like that's something you will find in film too, like the different personality types, right? I love talking about that. I will always talk about it. So like
You?
we talked about like
No.
I know, right? Me personality. So like there's different personality types that like different types of film, right? There's just some of
Hmm.
us willing to go to that pain, that darkness, that exploration. Some of us who need the softer. You know, there's no shame or judgment. It's just an observation, right?
No.
And that
Yeah.
I think like if you think about cinema therapy, what's a reason a therapist or a person would be assigning a certain film for a person? Like, would it match the personality, or would you want them to be like, hey, there's something I think you could explore because it doesn't fit your type? Like, what would you, the reasoning for something like that?
So initially, you could use it as more of an opening tool just to get them to open up about themselves. And another thing could be if they're going in for like trauma or something, you could find a movie with similar types of trauma and be like, I know this is hard, but how do you respond to this? So it can work on many levels. And it's again, it's not like pure therapy, but it's a good tool to help realize the patient, help realize that person. And it's also it's so much easier to talk about something instead of yourself.
Yes.
So you can just be like, well, how did you like that part in the movie? And
Mm,
they can go on forever. But if you ask them, how do you like that part in your life? And they'll clam up, you know?
yes. Ah,
So it's a way to draw it out. And then slowly you can be like, do you see the parallel? And they're like,
mhm.
oh,
Yes.
oh.
Yes. So I'm hearing a lot of things here. I'm hearing that you're basing it on someone's ability to even access that trauma or pain, right? That whatever the
Mhm.
area is. And then so it's like you also, as the helper, has to have a big library in the back of your mind of what potentially could be helpful, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
It's
there's that.
definitely for people like me who can walk into a room, see a clip for 3 seconds, and tell you the movie. Uh,
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's so cool. So that actually leads me to think about it could be extra work, but if someone loves film, it's not work, right? So like,
exactly.
would you recommend or like expect the helper to also know the film? You can't just like, oh, I asked someone in a group, they said to watch this film. You have to know it too, right? To even process or work through
Yes.
it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's also why it's such like a very limited scope of therapy because you don't have too many people like me who have both like the cinema and psychological backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So but there are tools out there. You can even go online. There's the founder of cinema therapy. They have a whole website where they list movies and they go by different subcategories. I think they might need a little updating for it personally, but like if you're trying to look up bipolar or child abuse or marital problems or this. They do have like subsets where you can be like, okay, here's this movie, look into this,
Mm,
and then you can go from there.
mhm. Ah, I have to throw in mythology right now. So like film is modern mythology. It just is. And so
Yes.
like all these archetypes and the heroic journeys of every single person is like captured in this snippet of time. It's so amazing because like you said, this list must be updated. The mythologies of our
Yes.
times does not match the mythologies of our ancestors. It cannot be that way. There could be parallels, but it has to be a way for us to be relevant in some way, or else it gets lost. The translation and the relatability is not there, so it's not as strong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also just some movies are just not, I would say, like 100% PC anymore
Yeah.
as well. So like where it might have been like a great tool at that time, I would be like, there's better ones out there that tackle the same issue. So
Oh,
it's also knowing like, what is appropriate.
so there's actually a vetting process too. You can't just like pick a film because it's under this category or subcategory. You have to do the work of like, is it appropriate for the client? Does it fit them in terms of like culture awareness? Is it socially appropriate right now too? Or are we kind of going
Right.
backwards? Dang, this is hard work.
I well, and I would say another big thing too is with the industry growing, with mental health awareness growing, there's movies that tackle these issues a lot better because they know more about it too. So
Mhm.
like, if again, it might have been like a great movie 10 years ago, there's like an updated version that's just better now.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh. You actually make me feel better about redos of things. Like, like, oh, they reboot this, they reboot that. Like, I used to get upset. I'm still partially more upset when they do that because some things I think should be left alone. But when you reframe it as like, well, some appropriateness or like updating is important too. It's a little bit of both for me now. Yeah, that makes sense.
mm,
Yeah. Oh.
mm. I mean, it's a weird example, but it's very fresh in my mind. There's this new movie on Netflix, the Sociedad de la Nieve. It's about the 1970 like five or whatever Uruguayan rugby team who like crash landed in the Alps and was like stranded there for a couple of months. It's a true story, and they made a movie about it. I don't know, like 10, 20 years ago or something, and it was called Alive. But
Oh.
it shied away from so much, and this updated version, like, it holds no bars, and it's like more true to their firsthand accounts. So it's kind of gruesome, but I was digging it, because it's a true story. It happened. We need to look at the cringy parts of society as well. Also, what are you drinking?
Well, my aunt bought this for me, this Winnie the Pooh cup. And I like cups. It's like the one thing that I'll take because I'm not really a gift person. I like cups. I put things in cups, food, soups, drinks. Um, so it's Winnie the Pooh, but I have this whole thing that I'm drinking this year. It's green tea matcha. Um,
Yeah.
it's mushroom matcha. So it's not
Ooh.
an ad, but the company is called Rise. And they had a promotion for New Year's. And so I've been buying it
Please
and
support me.
I've been trying it. I feel healthier. I'm not as fatigued. I don't crash every day like if you had coffee or sugar. Okay, anyways, so it's pretty good. I like it. And oh, so my question about movies. Um, how do you visualize? Because I'm about cognition too. How do you map out everything that's inside your head and access it? Do you have a metaphor for your brain? Like, what does it look like to you?
Oh, that's a loaded question because my brain is all over the place. Um, Look, first off, let me break down a little bit who I actually am. I am a person with Tourette syndrome
Hmm.
who and that is paired with ADHD, OCD, dysgraphia, auditory disconnect, and you know, so in a lot of it and also have lupus. So there's the brain fog that goes with that. Uh, so I am a mess. I am a medical anomaly over here.
Mm.
Um, and that's just the neurological parts. Let's not get into the rest. Um,
I love the dark humor, and that's has to accompany someone who has struggled but overcome. Just that side note. Anyways, my favorite people
yeah,
are
yeah.
dark humor. Side, yeah. So
Oh, good.
because of all partially, this is not even your whole story, but this is part of it. Um, how would you describe the networking going on, like cognitively?
I would say honestly, it really depends on the day. Like,
Mm,
if I'm having a really bad lupus flare up, obviously my cognition, like it'll slow down because there is a condition like brain fog that goes with lupus where there's literally times where I'll be mid sentence and I literally cannot speak.
mm,
And I'll be like, oh, hey, how's that? Uh, uh, and nothing will come out. So it's like that, the EKG that just goes
oh
at
no.
that point. Um, and then, but there's other times like when my ADHD is going haywire. So it's like, you know, if you took like a handful of Legos and chucked it, it just went everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And then and then when the lupus pops in, it's like stepping on the Legos that I just chucked everywhere. So I'm like, okay, stop. And then another part of me is like, oh, but shiny thing over here. And then, so it's like constantly all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And then there's just days where I just shut down completely and you wouldn't know I had any of those issues. And I'm just like a cocoon in the bed with my dogs. And I'm like, everyone go away, please. Bye.
Well, it's a good boundary, though. I'm glad you have it. Mhm. So it sounds like it's so sensory too. Like everything is about the stimulation and how it
Oh,
feels and how it affects you.
definitely, for sure. There's times where like I can get very overstimulated and I'm like, no, like I'm very triggered by certain things or stimuli where it gets too much. And I mean, I've now in my adulthood, I do have like coping techniques and things that I can do. But like I know as a kid, I would just like go nuts and just like run. Like I
I'm out of here. Hmm. That's funny. I used to maybe run away once or twice. That's funny.
more time than I could admit.
Yeah, the overlaps. The sensory stuff. Like, it's always interesting to hear how someone describes it. It's like the same type of experience, but so different. And the language is different,
Mm,
and like the stimulation itself is different. And like we all have like our own, what is it, concoction of things going on. But the thing that's like
yeah,
wild too is like people will always judge. They can never see what's going on underneath. Like, you look healthy, you're funny, like you're able to like maintain a job, blah blah blah. You even have a podcast. Like, how could you possibly be, having all these things going on? Like,
right.
it's like, so you need to prove how sick you are? Like, no, like I hate that. Like people
I
don't
it,
offer compassion just because you say it. Like, they don't believe you.
right. My favorite is with my Tourette syndrome. Obviously, it's a neurological disorder characterized by motor and vocal tics, and it's always a lot more prominent in people's lives during like adolescence and puberty because you
Mm.
already have all those chemical things going on crazy. So actually, I used to look like Reagan from The Exorcist, when I was a teenager, just constantly like crazy. And obviously, it's calmed down as an adult. And but there's times where people would look at me like, oh, the hell is wrong with this child? And I'm like, Tourette's, hi, and then just.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when I'm at work now and people don't realize it, I'll do like one of my ticks, and people are like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, I have this.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet you." Like,
When you say that, how do they usually respond, or what's the range of responses?
usually they're like, "No, you just did a whatever," or I'm
Oh.
just like, I can call up my neurologist right now. They're back in Virginia. Hi. My one of my favorite things though is my one coworker, Millie. I love her to death. She's like one of my daughters. Um, the first time I did one of my ticks, she thought I sneezed. And she's like, "Oh, bless you." And I'm like, what? She's like, "You sneezed, right?" And I was like, "No, I actually like, this is my Tourette's." And she's like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna continue to say bless you anyways."
That's
And
cute. That's very cute.
and, the,
Oh.
and then like through our team's messaging, she would like side eye me and then like send like a gif of like someone sneezing whenever I would do it. And I'm like, "You little shit," but whatever.
I love that. Like,
So
but that's part of like having strong community and self-acceptance and compassion. Like you've got to this place where it can be funny, you know.
yeah.
But before that and in between that, it's hard. It is so hard.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like, so there's a term, you're multiply neurodivergent, right? So like because of that term being co-opted in different spaces and being just so popular right now, it sometimes loses its meaning because they're like, oh, so does that mean you're quirky? Like, no, that is not what it means at all.
I wish that's what it meant, but no.
Yeah. And so like I've actually, so a side note too, like there's so many groups where someone tries to make, I want to do a symposium or make like um a fact sheet about neurodivergence. And I'm like, okay, so are you going to put in things like MS? Are you going to talk about Tourette's? Are you going to talk about all these other things? They're like, no, I'm just actually going to talk about autism and ADHD. I'm like, then you're not talking about neurodivergence. You're talking about two things that is very popular right now, and you're not even talking about the big part of the community. Even epilepsy, they're like, oh, I don't know. Like, what do you mean, no? A lot of epileptic people are autistic, so you're not going to talk about that. And so, like, sorry, getting fired up here, but like, this is a big deal for me because people are like
It's
picking and
it's
choosing. Yeah.
it's very true though, because unfortunately, especially with our with our therapeutic side, with our knowledge, a lot of people, it is like a fad thing,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Like
It
everyone's
is.
like mental health, but my biggest thing is um when I hear so many people, they're like, "Oh, go to betterhelp.com, go to this, go to that." And I'm like, that is a tool, yes. And I think it's great that they're advocating for mental health. Low key drives me insane.
Mm.
Low key drives me insane. And I am like, I don't care if they throw money at me. I don't want to advertise or sponsor for them. I don't. Because I don't care if it's thousands of licensed therapists at your service. I'm like, you're not getting the connection you need. You're not getting your
Mm-hmm.
true. It's one thing to have a relationship with a therapist and they say, okay, well, if after our first session, if you want to talk over the phone or whatever, then we can do that. But you can't start off completely blind.
Yeah.
And I hate that. It's about breaking down walls, not building up more. And it's kind of like it's an excuse to build up more, and I don't know, that's my pet peeve, honestly.
No, I love that you have strong opinions and pet peeves. There's a lot of people who are just way too neutral about everything. And so my opinion is like, you got to have something to fight for in this world or believe in. Like, it could be anything, even thinking that apple pie is the best pie in the world, something, right? So, like, um, some of us just lean more towards like this healing and helping perspectives of the world. And I think that's very important because a lot of people don't know. And they just like, if it's visible, like, I guess it says better help, I'll go there. All
Right.
these influencers are on this. Like, I can trust influencers, kind of, sort of. So, like, it's that's even a different realm, like brand deals and like people promoting.
But
Anyway, so like,
yeah.
yeah,
And I was gonna say we're going in a rabbit hole now.
we totally are. But with all the things that you've experienced and are, continuing to manage and go through, um, are there any films that have helped you with that?
Actually, there are a lot of films that have helped me. Um, I think my I would say my first film that really helped me was with um like my sexual orientation, and that was the movie Chasing Amy. And I was like, I've always been like a hypersexualized person, and like I remember as a little kid like watching Power Rangers, and I'm like, Mom, I really like the Red Ranger. And she's like, Oh, that's nice. I'm like, but the Pink Ranger's really cute too. And she's like, keep that between you and me, not your dad.
Aw,
So like my mom is very supportive and like and everything, but she's like, if you have anything like that, come to me first. Don't go to anybody else.
aw, yeah, yeah.
And then but I was like, I'm like, that girl's pretty, that guy's handsome, just and then finally with that, with that movie Chasing Amy, and it's about this guy who falls in love with like a lesbian, but she's not really a lesbian, and she just opens herself up to everything, and it's a timepiece. It is straight 90s. It's very set in its time because now there's so much more to sexual orientation and everything that there is now. Um, like this movie would not exist in today's standards, but it helped me at the time because I was a 90s kid, so needed
Mhm.
that. But yeah, so it's not even just neurologically speaking, it can be orientation speaking. Um, but yeah, that was the first film that like really opened my eyes, and I was like, you love both. It's like,
Yeah, why not both? I love that you said that because there is a range. And sometimes when people go into help or looking for a therapist, they think, well, I don't have mental health problems. Why am I going? Like you just said that. It's like identity is a big part of your life. Why wouldn't you want to go through and talk with someone, a couple people, to just sort things through? Because just there's stigma, there's certain spaces that don't accept, and like just slowly, even just like questioning doesn't mean like coming out is like the end all for everybody, but like questioning is a big part of it too. Like you need to feel like you're able to even just like explore. People don't even always have that, and film can give you that.
let's say the Kinsey scale wasn't made by some random dude. He was a psychologist. Like, you
Hmm.
know, it's it's a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I like that you threw that in. Kinsey scale. We're gonna have all these like sub facts underneath. We gotta go through it again and watch.
So
And
many
then
hashtags.
yeah, for sure. Oh gosh, so like your ability to like keep up with people and like track and do podcasts with so many people, is it like a special interest of yours because you're so good at it? Like you're so good at like jumping onto what people are saying and just like this and this and this. Like it's a skill. It's a very good skill that you have, and it's just like just wanted to acknowledge that you have it. And I've been observing, taking notes.
Appreciate that. I'm a rare bug in the sense that I am fine with like the dream is to be a hermit on the farm with all my animals, and but at the same time I'm going to be the first person to like jump in and like talk to somebody as well. I It annoys even myself sometimes. So um but yeah, I especially, if it's something that truly interests me, I just want to jump. I want to learn more. I've never been one for like a quote unquote formal education, whereas I approve of it. It just never I couldn't finish college because I could not do the lecture rooms. It Because of like my auditory disconnect, and like they don't offer the same 504s and IEPs they do in like
Mm,
public
yep,
high schools and things
yep.
like that. So it's very difficult because I grew up needing all of those, and I fought for, and I didn't even get all the accommodations that I technically needed in school, let alone when I went to college. So it was very defeatist when I went to college because it's set up so um
Hmm.
rigid.
Yeah.
It's meant for one type of learning. And
Yes.
I'm like, well, that ain't me. But when I can talk to people like you or Elizabeth or like anybody else in these fields, when I can have like this discussion, I can do references and pull this information like, oh yeah, I want to know, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to know all these things.
Mhm.
Um, and so that I think it's why I tend to gravitate and pull and discuss with people because it's just I want to learn.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
want to learn.
Right. So that's another side of your neurodivergence too. Like you're insatiable with knowledge. You want to seek the patterns and like establish your own personal knowledge, apply it, right? And seek like some kind of consensus and just ask questions or reflect. And that's like what I've noticed with education too. So like the college counselor inside me came out and I wanted to just like console you and be like, you're right, education system is pretty fucked up. Like, and that's probably why I left. I was at a limit. And I was so sad to see that all these
Yeah.
systems are not changing. I would be in
Yeah.
charge of actually issuing accommodations for my students, and I would be heartbroken. So like I don't work with them anymore. I'll never name this the system because I don't want to get in trouble. But like
Yeah.
because of like not being able to translate the needs and for the professors to understand, they're always like, why do they need it? It just sounds like they're being lazy. They're not trying hard. And I'm like, you just don't know the struggles and having different brains. If you had a child like that, or if you had a different brain, you would never say these things. You just expect everyone to have the same brain. This is so wild. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And you're in like
Right.
creative arts or something, and it's like, I don't want to get in trouble. But like my personal opinion on this stuff is like I'm not saying the opinion of the institution I work at. This is mine. My opinion is like it is like 30 years behind.
But
It's the
it's true though. It is very true. And I support your rant and hatred of that system. It's
yeah.
I totally agree because part of what my mom did for me with the educational system, let alone what because she also used to be the administrative assistant for the Tourette Syndrome Association of Greater Washington. So that was part of her job as well, is to help all these parents get the accommodations for other kids with Tourette's. That's how she was able to help me because it was part of her job. It was crazy, right place. She was working for them before I was even diagnosed. It
Oh
was really
really?
weird,
She
crazy.
kind of
Like,
feeling. I don't know.
yeah,
Universe. Thank
no,
you.
it was crazy. I should write a book one day. But,
Waiting for it.
um, but that was part of her thing, and she would go and consult with these parents and say, "Hey, this is what you need. This is how you need to get it." And a lot of times, the schools would just be like, "Nah,"
Yeah.
and I'm like,
They're like, this is not reasonable, right? So like,
"Yeah,
you can deny anything if it's not quote unquote reasonable. And that makes me so sad. It's like, well, why don't we make the schools more funded, support the teachers so they understand a little bit more of like what the differences actually do to a learner? And like, it's always about like selling something, right? How does it benefit you as a school or a teacher? Like, well, your numbers would go up. You get more money if the kids don't like not go to school. If it's a public school, they get money from attendance, right? If your kid's not wanting to
mhm,
come to school because they're not being supported and they're like having tantrums, you lose money. So if you want more money, you'd want to be able to learn how to teach and accommodate more types of learners. Anyways, we can talk about education on a totally different talk too, probably on your podcast as well. So like, and have Elizabeth come in as well. She's gonna have the optimism coming in too, with the love and rainbows and the hearts
yes,
and
we
sunshine.
need someone to balance us out from. We're
Not
just
talk
like
about doom and gloom and
we're
horror.
just like fuck the world, and Elizabeth's like, let's skip down the way.
All right, fine, I'll skip with you.
Fine, but I'm gonna complain the whole time.
Yeah, I will. I will. And I will rant about systemic inequalities forever. That's I do have hope though. That's the thing. I have your hope too. I have hope. I have you, and like I have the concept of hope. It's important to talk about these things, just like film. It's important to represent all aspects of humanity because that's life. We're not masking or lying about existence.
Yeah.
I'm picturing Elizabeth watching this. She's like, why do you guys keep talking about me? Stop, I'm not even here. Next time you
Oh
talk with us.
gosh. Right.
Hmm.
Mm.
I want to check for time. Actually don't know the time. I will watch. Oh, geez, some tea. So it's like less than an hour. Um, so gosh, we talked about two main things though. We talked about your multiple neurodivergences, and then we talked about cinema therapy, and then we overlapped it with like the system itself.
Mhm.
So, do many schools or programs have cinema therapy? Like where do you even get trained for cinema therapy?
Honestly, it's one of those things where it's not really known. If you go to, so if you do like cinematherapy.com, there is, the site is inspiration. Bridget Waltz, PhD, MFT,
Mhm.
has worked as a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and grief counselor with individuals and couples since
Mm.
71. She's practiced
Oh
in
wow.
California. She facilitates cinema therapy groups and workshops for personal and spiritual growth. Um, Offers trainings, online courses, and therapists and nurses. I would say it's more so of a continuing education, more so than
Okay.
your basic
Hmm.
like schooling per se. Um, but again, once you get into like real niche things like that, it's always going to be like a continuing
Hmm.
education,
Yeah.
and because there's not going to be, again, it was very random that I even learned about it when I did, because it was not a part of my curriculum. My teacher was just like, "This is cool, and I'm going to teach you guys, so deal with it." And I'm like, "More, yes, more."
Yeah.
Uh,
Very nice.
so it was, even if I wasn't in that class in that year at that time, I wouldn't even know about it probably. So
Mm.
it's all like so serendipitous, so to say. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm. So neat. Hmm. Oh, okay. So like when you do the cinema therapy, is there a specific way to like know that it's time to bridge the two worlds of like, hey, you've been watching this or this, and like, by the way, maybe this is about you too. Like, how do you know when it's right?
It comes down to how you pose questions for the person. You want to slowly draw them out into it. You want to make them start to self-actualize. And once they start to get passionate, so to say, if they're just kind of like robotically responding to your questions about the movie, then that's one thing. You might wait. You're not just gonna like jump and be like, "Well, this is you." Uh,
Right, impatient,
so,
right?
so you want them to get invested, so to say, before you start to bridge that gap. Like, "Oh, well, you're really passionate about this," or, "Oh, you really seem to have a greater opinion." It's like, it's that
Mhm.
think. Is it because good thing? Um, so it's, I mean, just like with any normal therapy, you're not going to be hyper intrusive if from the get go. You need to like break down and really get to the core of things before you can do that. So
Mhm.
it's very similar guidelines as to like your basic therapy.
Mhm. I want to repeat that because, like, a lot of people sometimes think that all the fancy trainings are going to make you a better therapist or helper in some way. But, like, really, it comes down to everything is about the basics. If you understand really well how something actually happens in terms of change processes, unwellness, and then wellness and healing, like, you got it. And, like, all the extra flavors that you tend to shape it in, that's the trainings, right? But, like, I think sometimes we tend to overly commit or think that the magic comes from the $1,000 stuff that we put in to get the licenses and the CEUs. And like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, nope. If you at the core understand the basics of how this works and the philosophy and the functioning of change and your job as the person in the space, then you're good. You're golden.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of, it's sad that some people overlook that, because it's like that's why we're here. It's for the basic need. I'm not coming to you because, oh, well, I hypnotized a hippo and now they can cure autism while painting a Picasso. Like, no, that's not why I went to you. It's because I'm sad and I want you to help me feel better. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like the whole process of writing a film or a work of art too. It's this, well, certain people do it for technical reasons, but like some people do it for like the symbolic human element of something, right? And if you can break it down simply like that, then you can do it with a human being. But I think we sometimes lose it because in the field, we are about accolades and how many books you've published, how many articles you've put your name on, all the fancy schmancy things that you do. But like, there's so many people that can help. Like, it's weird to see that we pair worth or like how much impact someone can do based on like the things you see on the outside. You know, it's just weird.
mhm. It's true. It's just a part of like society in and of itself, and it's I feel like basic needs are a lost art form just as a generalization, let alone when you do subcategories into different fields, you know?
I do have a final
Even
question now. Yeah. Even
yeah.
what?
Oh, I was like, even with just like health, basic healthcare and whatnot,
Oh,
I,
we're not going
you
into
know, no, I know.
that.
Just both you and I have currently been fighting for things, so
Yeah, I feel you. I had a good, the question was, since you know that cinema therapy has healing potential, when is it escaping? When is it going too far to not acknowledge or identify your own process to heal and grow?
that would be when it's they blame. I would say when it's become too much of an escapism. Like, yes, they might. It can be one of those things where they identify everything within that film that you want them to breach. They can be like, oh, they could get everything down to the T, but then still refuse to say,
Mhm.
oh, well, that's me. They can
Mhm.
still refuse it. And it's like, well, the whole reason why we're here is because of you to begin with. The reason you're in my seat in front of me is because you said there's something with you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then that's when you have to pull away and be like, okay, some real tough love here.
Ah, okay. So the style comes out too now. So like this is great because I am a very gentle person. You can even hear it in my voice, right? Like I'm pretty soft, but I will do the same thing with my clients. So like if they don't quote unquote click together and like there's this impasse that's their self-sabotage, the self-pity, the victimization
Hmm.
for continues for X amount of time. And I'm like, do you want this? Yes or no? They're like, no, of course not. I'm like, okay, well then, since you already answered that question, I'm gonna give you some, you know, truth here. This is what's going on. And then
Right.
it's delivered so gently and in a way that makes sense because you have this relationship. It's like established
Hmm.
over time. The trust is there. You've been patient and
Yes.
gentle enough where they could just be themselves, like fall apart as a blob. And then sooner or later, you get a feel for when it's time to shift the energy a tiny bit. But if you go too much, of
Hmm.
course, people will revert back to default. So like it is a
Yes.
craft, it's an art form to know how much to push someone and let them know, like, hey, by the way, you are sabotaging yourself. You know this, right? Like, so you've
Yeah.
already identified it, you named it. So like we're gonna work towards what do you want to do about it? Do you want to stay here? I'll stay with you. We could do this. Like, but like I'm just gonna let you know, like, we'll check in again when you're ready to get out. So like there is a need to kind of like stay in the muck, but at the same time, when it becomes self-sabotage, like, what are we gonna do about this? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's hard.
If only it were so easy.
I know. And it's always like
Just,
cyclical.
just shake the patient, be like, that's wrong. That's right.
Like, what do you want to do with your life? It's like, Booney, stop. Oh, sorry.
Can we please watch Shrinking? Like,
Yeah, I want to watch it. I do. I actually want to watch it and then like commentate on parts of it because I I have so many things and connections. Sometimes I always forget after. So maybe I'll just do a Word doc or something as I'm watching too. So because I don't want to interrupt too. Because sometimes I get in immersed in the subject and the connection instead of watching it itself. So I don't want to do that as well. But we'll see. But I do want to watch it with you.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I think we're gonna wrap up here. I do want to talk to you after. So like don't go.
No, no, no. wrap up the professional.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hope. Your expertise and experience, it's been so warm and it's just like refreshing. It really is refreshing to talk to you. It just like there's this humanity, you know, that comes from having someone with so much lived experience and this backing of a wealth of knowledge from all these disciplines. And I do want to talk about your work next time or whenever we do get to talk. Because if you want to share, I want to share with the community because like, what do you do? So I will leave it at
Which
that
job? Because I've had so many.
I know, and people can guess like, what have you done? What has Hope done? And so like that'll be fun too. Like, so leave in the comment, what do you think Hope has done?
Right.
Just based on these stories. And it'd be fun to hear. So thank you again. Is there anything you would like to leave people with? Oh, can you name your podcast so people can find you?
Yes. So I am part of Jaguar Sharks. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X, whatever the hell they're calling it now. But we're under Jaguar Sharks. That is our podcast like brand name. But my personal podcast through them is Mind Brain Movies. You can just look for the little brain dude with film reels coming out of him, and that would be me. So
that's perfect. I will add that to the description and hopefully we can collaborate soon. Thank you so much.
yes, thank you, my love.